Trân trọng kính chào khán giả của đài truyền hình SBTN. Thưa quý vị, đáng lý hôm nay chúng tôi làm chương trình Xoáy tin, nhưng mà hôm nay có một chương trình đặc biệt. Tôi và Mai Phi Long sẽ phỏng vấn đại sứ Mark Napper của Hoa Kỳ tại Việt Nam, ngồi bên cạnh tôi đây. Và kế tiếp là thượng nghị sĩ Luke Correa đang đại diện Địa hạt 46 miền Nam California. Chúng tôi sẽ làm cả tiếng Anh và tiếng Việt, và khi tôi đặt câu hỏi thì sau đó hai vị này trả lời thì anh Long sẽ thông dịch. Welcome to the program. At first, let me introduce a little bit about you and Congressman Luke Correa. Ambassador Mark Napper now is the ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Vietnam. He was confirmed in 2021 and came to Vietnam in 22. Before that, he was a Deputy Assistant Secretary for Korea and Japan. And then he used to work in Baghdad, Hanoi, Seoul, and Tokyo. And he speaks 4 languages: English, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese. Thưa quý vị, đại sứ Mark Napper được bổ nhiệm và đến Việt Nam vào năm 2022. Trước đó ông là phó phụ tá ngoại trưởng đặc trách về Nam Hàn và Nhật. Ông từng làm việc tại Baghdad, Tokyo, Seoul và Hà Nội. Ông nói được 4 thứ tiếng: tiếng Anh, tiếng Việt, tiếng Hàn và tiếng Nhật. Congressman Luke Correa is a very well-known person in Vietnamese community. He used to be a state assembly member and state senator and Orange County supervisor, and he's now member of Congress represent the 46th district in Orange County. Dân biểu Luke Correa là một người rất nổi tiếng của cộng đồng Việt Nam. Ông từng là dân biểu tiểu bang California, thượng nghị sĩ California và là giám sát viên Orange County. Bây giờ ông là dân biểu Liên bang Hoa Kỳ đại diện Địa hạt 46. First of all, I will jump back and forth between you and I. Chủ đề của chúng tôi ngày hôm nay là về quan hệ Việt-Mỹ. Our topic today will be about U.S.-Vietnam relation. And Ambassador Napper, you were there in Hanoi on September 10, and you observed President Biden upgrade relation with Vietnam to the highest one. We call Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, and mainly economic. Why not military?
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. Hello to your viewers as well. Really real privilege to be able to be here this morning and talk about the U.S.-Vietnam relationship. President Biden, truly a historic visit to Vietnam, September 10th and 11th, during which, as you said, we upgraded our two countries' relationship to that of a comprehensive strategic partnership. And the implications of this, I think, are going to be very broad. Covering the full range of our two countries' bilateral ties, everything from trade and investment, as you mentioned, but also to include things like defense cooperation, security cooperation, cooperation in science, technology, innovation, high-tech research and development, education, people-to-people ties, cultural ties, you name it. If one were to look at the joint statement between our two countries, it covers 10 areas of cooperation, which do include how we can deepen military, defense, security cooperation. But you're right, one key centerpiece of the visit and of the documents that came out of the visit are cooperation with Vietnam on helping to build an innovation-driven, high-tech-led economy, one in which Vietnamese manufacturing can move up the value chain to be a more essential part of global supply chains that benefit the United States, that benefit manufacturers here in the United States. And so I would fully expect, I'm incredibly confident, that going forward, what this comprehensive strategic partnership means for American manufacturers, for American farmers, American ranchers, American consumers, American businesses, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, it's going to mean more opportunities for growth, more opportunities for prosperity here at home in the U.S., and frankly, a greater sense of security for the United States in a part of the world, the Indo-Pacific, in which, frankly, the United States and our friends, allies, and partners like Vietnam face real challenges.
Vâng, thưa quý vị, anh Đỗ Dũng hỏi ông đại sứ Napper về chuyện mà Hoa Kỳ nâng cấp quan hệ chiến lược toàn diện, chỉ nói về vấn đề kinh tế mà không nói về vấn đề quân sự. Thì đại sứ Napper trả lời rằng là trong cái thỏa thuận đó thì Hoa Kỳ nói nhiều vấn đề, ngoài cái chuyện kinh tế cũng có luôn các vấn đề quốc phòng và nhắm đến cái chuyện mà xây dựng một cái nền kinh tế kỹ thuật mà nhiều hơn cho bên phía Việt Nam, cũng như là lĩnh vực quốc phòng. Và cái điều mà ông quan tâm nhiều nhất đó là những cái việc mà nâng cấp quan hệ như thế ảnh hưởng như thế nào đến thị trường của nước Mỹ, ảnh hưởng như thế nào đến nền an ninh của nước Mỹ, và cái việc nâng cấp chiến lược đó tạo cái ảnh hưởng như thế nào cho Hoa Kỳ tại vùng Ấn Độ Dương, Thái Bình Dương và các quốc gia nằm trong khu vực, trong đó có Việt Nam.
Congressman Luke Correa, you know you're a human rights champion, and at least you know this one, and you heard from your constituency concern about human rights sector in the relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam, and you also the co-chair of Vietnam Caucus. And what's your reaction when you see the U.S. and Vietnam upgrade relation with such a regime like Vietnam?
Xin kính chào quý vị, tôi là Luke Correa. I work for you. I want to thank you for having me back on your show. We have a long relationship working with the Vietnamese community here in Orange County. And I must say that you are correct. What's important to the community is what is important to me. And human rights is one of the most important issues that we have. As the ambassador has said, is the relations between U.S. and Vietnam change, and apparently they're getting better. We have to make sure we don't forget those family members we have back home in Vietnam, to make sure that human rights and religious freedom is protected. Ambassador, September 10th was a trip President Biden went to Vietnam, and I'm happy to say that a number of congressmen, including myself, wrote a letter to the president asking him, urging him to make sure that human rights was a subject that was not forgotten, because the world is changing. After COVID-19, we are emerging in a new world, not only in terms of militarily, but also when it comes to supply chain, chips, critical minerals. We want to make sure that America is able to source from many places around the world. And it looks like Vietnam could fit into that supply chain picture, so to speak. But we want to make sure that human rights, religious freedom are protected. Yesterday, I attended a ceremony to celebrate the life of Bishop Brown of the Catholic Church here in Orange County. And I learned that Bishop Brown had gone many times to Vietnam to meet with the government of Vietnam, urging a better relationship between the Catholic Church and the government of Vietnam. So myself as a Catholic and others here in Little Saigon as Catholics, we are looking forward to more respect of human rights by the Vietnamese government.
Vâng, thưa quý vị, anh Đỗ Dũng có hỏi dân biểu Korea là khi mà Hoa Kỳ nâng cái tầng quan hệ chiến lược với Việt Nam, thì ông Luke Correa từ trước đến nay là một người tranh đấu cho nhân quyền, thì ông có những cái bước như thế nào để mà đem kêu gọi cái sự nhân quyền cho Việt Nam? Thì dân biểu Luke Correa có nói rằng là ông đã gửi thư khẩn cầu Tổng thống Joe Biden, khi Tổng thống Joe Biden ghé Việt Nam, là phải chú trọng về cái vấn đề nhân quyền. Ngoài cái việc là bên phía Hoa Kỳ muốn Việt Nam nằm trong một cái quỹ đạo về kinh tế thế giới, muốn Việt Nam trở thành một cái quốc gia nằm trong cái chuỗi cung ứng về kỹ thuật trên toàn cầu, nhưng mà không thể nào quên được về cái vấn đề nhân quyền cho Việt Nam. Cũng như là ông Luke Correa có nhắc về cái ngày hôm qua trong cái buổi đi gọi là giữ cái tang lễ của Tổng giám mục Brown, thì cũng nói về cái việc mà có một cái mối quan hệ giữa Tòa Thánh La Mã, đạo Công giáo với lại bên phía chính quyền Việt Nam, bởi vì trong cộng đồng Việt Nam chúng ta người Công giáo cũng rất là đông, để mà có một cái sự tự do tôn giáo ở Việt Nam.
This is for Ambassador Napper. It seems to everybody that relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam, develop, and the human rights issue still there, but kind of a little bit, less priority. Like I observed from President Donald Trump when he visited Vietnam in 2017. I remember the human rights issues like number 10 on the 14, And a lot of people say that, okay, the U.S. want to have better relationship with Vietnam to counterbalance with China, but also still keep human rights issue as your top priority. But how can you navigate, how can you balance these two issues together? Can you explain?
Sure. Well, thank you. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think we can continue to be true to our values as Americans, to ensure that we follow up regularly and have honest and frank conversations with our Vietnamese counterparts on the very important subject of human rights. As President Biden himself noted when he visited Vietnam September 10th and 11th, he raised human rights issues in all of his high-level meetings. This is something that, of course, at my level, I raise regularly. My team in the embassy and the consul general raise regularly. Secretary Blinken of the State Department, when he was in Hanoi, certainly raised. Samantha Power, the head of U.S. Agency for International Development, raised when she was in Vietnam. And so addressing human rights, religious freedom issues are a regular and important feature of our bilateral contacts with Vietnam. In fact, November 1st and 2nd, later this week, in Washington, we have our regular human rights dialogue with Vietnam, in which we'll discuss concerns related to individuals and the overall picture in Vietnam. And so these conversations take place as a key aspect of our bilateral ties. But at the same time, we have a very broad relationship in which we cover many different areas that I described earlier, including trade, investment, defense, security, you name it. But just one point I'd like to make, we don't see our relationship with Vietnam in the context of relations with other countries. We don't look at Vietnam-U.S. relations as a part of a strategy to deal with other countries, namely the PRC. There's intrinsic value in the U.S.-Vietnam relationship. There is an importance to our ties with Vietnam that go beyond relations with other countries. A strong, secure, prosperous relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam has great implications for the American people in terms of our own country's security, in terms of our own country's prosperity. And so all of our efforts with Vietnam, including cooperative activities in trade and defense, as well as conversations about human rights, are all geared towards strengthening, fundamentally, this bilateral partnership that is growing and benefiting the people of the United States.
Câu hỏi của anh Đỗ Dũng đặt cho ông đại sứ Napper về cái vấn đề khi mà Hoa Kỳ trong cái quan hệ ngoại giao với Việt Nam có đặt cái vấn đề nhân quyền, liệu Hoa Kỳ có giảm đi cái tình trạng nhân quyền để mà có một mối quan hệ Việt Nam để mà đương đầu với Trung Quốc hay không? Thì đại sứ Napper trả lời rằng là đây là hai vấn đề hoàn toàn khác nhau. Đối với Hoa Kỳ, chuyện mà quan hệ với Việt Nam để tạo ra một cái tình trạng an ninh tốt đẹp hơn cho Hoa Kỳ và kinh tế của Hoa Kỳ tốt hơn, và cái chuyện Hoa Kỳ có mối quan hệ ngoại giao với Việt Nam không phải là để vì là đối phó với một quốc gia thứ ba, mà chủ yếu là tạo cái sự quan hệ hai nước cho tốt đẹp hơn mà thôi.
This question is for Congressman Lu Correa. Your previous colleagues like Congresswoman Loretta Sett used to go to Vietnam, and a lot of your colleagues used to go to Vietnam. They always, bang, bang, bang on human rights. As your position right now, and you're like the human rights champion, you think someday you go to Vietnam and raise this issue? Because from the Congress, I think your voice is better than the administration, because administration sometimes they have to balance. You represent the people, you speak easier. And will you go to Vietnam someday you do this?
You're absolutely right. I'm here to present the views of the community, the Vietnamese community in Orange County, to advocate for what you believe is important from the government of Vietnam. My former chief of staff, Tammy Tran, went to Vietnam a number of years ago when she was working for me. She got to Vietnam, was arrested, detained, and then she was deported to Thailand for no reason, no crime, other than the fact that she worked for me, and the government of Vietnam knew that my office was very strong when it came to human rights. Moving forward, I continue to hold that position, which is strongly support human rights. And of course, as a Catholic, religious freedom as well in Vietnam. I look forward to someday going to Vietnam. And of course, I've learned from Loretta and my predecessors to send that message, to bring that message, to deliver that message to the government of Vietnam directly. So, sir, first chance I get, I will go to Vietnam and do the same. Thank you.
This question is for...
Let me translate that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anh Đỗ Dũng có hỏi ông dân biểu Korea là ngày trước ông có một người tiền nhiệm là bà Loretta Sanchez, là một người gọi là vô địch trong chuyện nhân quyền, đã từng đến Việt Nam và ở ngay tại Việt Nam đưa ra những cái khẩu hiệu mà kêu gọi nhân quyền. Thì anh Đỗ Dũng hỏi ông Korea có dám làm như vậy không? Thì ông Korea trả lời là ông sẵn sàng làm cái việc đó, và ông kể lại một cái câu chuyện một người nhân viên ngày trước làm việc cho ông, đó là bà Tâm Trần, về Việt Nam và bị gọi là bị câu lưu, bị bắt giữ và bị trục xuất ra khỏi Việt Nam for no reason. Và ông nói rằng là ông đại diện cho người Việt ở tại khu vực này, khu vực ở tại Orange County, và ông sẵn sàng lên tiếng nói về nhân quyền khi ông có bất kỳ cơ hội nào để ông làm việc đó.
Yes, this question is for Ambassador Napper. The growing tension in the South China Sea, you know, now between China, the Philippines, also Vietnam. And recently, there's some incident between China and the Philippines and the U.S. through President Biden's promise that we will protect our ally, something like that. So, how Vietnam fit into the economic framework, not, you know, the military, developed by President Biden when he went to Vietnam and upgrade relationship. Like you said, you know, the U.S. want Vietnam prosperous. It's good for Vietnam and good for the U.S. But with the tension like this, how Vietnam fit into that through the policy of President Joe Biden?
So, thank you very much. I mean, one point I guess I'd make is that last year, the United States, under the Biden-Harris administration, initiated what's called the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, or IPEF. Vietnam was a charter member, a founding member, if you will, of this effort. And through it, negotiations are ongoing, and we hope to be able to significantly wrap them up in time for the APEC meeting in San Francisco in November. But many of the benefits that will derive from this new framework are related to everything from labor standards to supply chain resilience to green and clean infrastructure, IPR protection, many different areas that you don't find in a traditional free trade agreement. And so we're very excited about what IPEF means for the United States and for our role in the Indo-Pacific and for the role we play with our partners like Vietnam. And Vietnam has been an essential member from the beginning, and we're grateful for the work that all the other countries, including partners like Japan, South Korea, and others, have made for this multilateral effort. At the same time, you mentioned South China Sea, and I think I would just make note of the fact that one of the key pillars of the U.S. approach to Vietnam is to ensure Vietnam is strong, is independent, is prosperous, and has the ability to defend its interests, whether at sea, in the air, in cyberspace, or on land. And we've been very vigorous in our work with Vietnam to ensure it's got capabilities, Coast Guard capabilities to defend its interests in the South China Sea, whether it's natural resources or other interests. And we've supplied Vietnam with high-endurance Coast Guard cutters, 3 now, with ships, patrol ships called Metal Sharks, 24 of those, with training facilities, with repair facilities, all because we share with Vietnam a very strong interest in ensuring the South China Sea is free and open, that the South China Sea is free from coercion or any attempt to unilaterally change the status quo. We share with Vietnam belief in the importance of international law, particularly the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea from 1982. And so in these areas in which U.S. and Vietnam interests are coincident, are overlapping, this benefits the United States, this benefits Vietnam, this benefits American security, this benefits stability in the region, and it benefits the environment that creates prosperity for the people, not just of the United States, but Vietnam and others in the region.
Thưa quý vị, Đại sứ Napper nói về quan hệ Hoa Kỳ khi đến Việt Nam trong cái bối cảnh mà gọi là căng thẳng về cái chuyện tranh chấp ở tại khu vực Biển Đông. Thì Hoa Kỳ và theo chính sách của Tổng thống Joe Biden là kéo Việt Nam vào trong cái quỹ đạo về cung cấp kinh tế để nâng cái khả năng kinh tế của Việt Nam lên. Và về phía cạnh mà quốc phòng, đại sứ Napper cũng nói là Hoa Kỳ đã cung cấp cho Việt Nam về các lực lượng mà tuần duyên, những cái chiến hạm để mà giúp đỡ cho Việt Nam bảo vệ cái bờ biển của bên phía Việt Nam. Và đồng thời Hoa Kỳ cũng chia sẻ cái quan điểm của Việt Nam về những cái vấn đề rủi ro xảy ra trong khu vực Biển Đông, về những cái chuyện mà các tàu lạ đâm vào các cái tàu Việt Nam, hoặc là những cái vấn đề về Việt Nam, giúp Việt Nam phòng thủ và bảo vệ bờ biển của mình.
Yes, the next question is for Congressman Lu Correa. You've been representing Vietnamese community for many years, and everybody know you. And like I said, you're a human rights champion, and now you're in Congress. And I don't see you sit in the Foreign Relations Committee. You sit in the Judiciary and the Homeland Security. Some people told me that if you sit in the Foreign Relations Committee, you might do better in influence better in U.S. foreign policy to Vietnam. What do you think about that? Or you plan someday you're going to sit in that committee?
First of all, I want to say I'm honored to be in Congress. I work for you, and I'll continue to work for you. A judiciary is a big committee with a lot of responsibility. Homeland Security is a committee that, very similar to foreign relations, we deal with other countries. We deal with securing not only the United States, but the security of other countries. So those two committees keep me very busy. And ultimately, it's about protecting America, protecting America's interests. And that being the case, I have a lot to do, but more importantly, I listen to the community and take direction from you. Thank you.
Anh Dũng đặt một câu hỏi cũng rất khá là lý thú, là nói là dân biểu Korea đang ở tại Quốc hội, nằm trong cái Ủy ban Tư pháp và Ủy ban Nội an. Nhưng mà nếu mà ông được vào trong cái Ủy ban về đối ngoại thì cái chuyện là quan hệ Việt Nam và Hoa Kỳ sẽ là thú vị hơn. Thì dân biểu Korea trả lời rằng là bây giờ ông làm việc trong các ủy ban kia là cũng rất nhiều điều mà phải nói rằng là quan trọng để mà làm, và có nhiều cái lĩnh vực khác nhau, và ông sẽ làm mọi thứ trong cái vai trò của mình để mà xứng đáng là cái vị trí là đại diện cho người dân ở tại Orange County. And by this, I would like to say, I mean, it's not too late. I will tell you a story. About 20 years ago, he's going to help us when we found the Vietnamese Nail Association to help the Vietnamese people, and he is the one, the force behind us to help us to see the people in Sacramento.
You're the force. You are the force. Thank you.
Thank you. Với quý vị thì tôi cũng nói riêng kể một câu chuyện ngày xưa, cách đây khoảng chừng 20 năm khi chúng tôi thành lập cái hiệp hội nail để mà giúp cho người Việt Nam làm nail ở tại California. Chính dân biểu Korea là người giúp chúng tôi đi lên Sacramento để đem cái thông điệp của người Việt Nam cho Sacramento. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So he was in Sacramento now. He's in Washington D.C.
Yes.
Bigger role. Okay.
Yes.
Last question I would like to say for Ambassador Napper. What do you think relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam in the next 10 years? As your position as ambassador, what do you think about you forecast about in the next 10 years? Last question for you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I've left my crystal ball at home in my suitcase, so I'll do my best to answer. But but I think if you just look at the trajectory of the last 10 years, I think we have reason to be very optimistic. I think if you look at our trade numbers, for example, Vietnam is now the 8th largest trading partner of the United States. The United States is Vietnam's #1 export market. Increasingly, we're seeing Vietnamese investment in the United States, whether it's VinFast investing $4 billion in North Carolina, whether it's franchises like King Coffee investing right here in Orange County. So I would expect to see greater trade, greater investment underneath this new comprehensive strategic partnership. I think we're going to see many more opportunities for American businesses to succeed in Vietnam, and I would add among them, of course, businesses run by Vietnamese Americans. I think our vibrant, dynamic Vietnamese American community is perfectly situated to take advantage of this thriving relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam, whether it's investing in Vietnam, whether it's doing business with Vietnam, building bridges every day between our two countries for the benefit, the prosperity of our two peoples. I would expect to see, of course, we're going to continue to vigorously discuss human rights concerns with Vietnam in the time ahead, and and again, we'll do so in a way that's frank but respectful. And I think we're going to continue to find new avenues of cooperation, whether it's health, which we have a great relationship with Vietnam. We work together on COVID-19, whether it's science technology, helping Vietnam to expand supply chains to include high-tech manufacturing, which ultimately, again, is going to benefit the United States. The more diverse our supply chains are, not relying on a single country, but including countries, partners like Vietnam, the more it benefits the United States, the more it secures our own country's economic prosperity. So I am very optimistic about the U.S.-Vietnam relationship going forward, and really do just want to sort of give a shout out to Congressman Correa and all the members of Congress over the years who've committed so much to building this relationship on both sides of the aisle, Democratic and Republican. Individuals like Michelle Steele as well. Going back, individuals like John McCain, John Kerry. These are giants in our Congress who have done so much to build this relationship between our two countries, and we're going to continue to count on our friends in Congress to support this relationship going forward. Thank you.
Anh Dũng hỏi ông đại sứ Napper về viễn kiến của ông trong 10 năm tới quan hệ Việt Nam Hoa Kỳ như thế nào. Thì ông nghĩ rằng là ông nghĩ rằng quan hệ hai bên sẽ tốt đẹp và Việt Nam cần được Hoa Kỳ đưa vào cái quỹ đạo về kinh tế. Việt Nam phải trở thành một trong những quốc gia cung cấp là cái nguồn cung ứng cho Hoa Kỳ, và khi mà Hoa Kỳ tản các nguồn cung ứng đến nhiều quốc gia khác nhau, đó là cái việc bảo vệ cho cái sự an ninh về kinh tế cho nước Mỹ. Và ông nghĩ rằng vai trò của người Mỹ gốc Việt sẽ đóng góp rất lớn trong cái mối quan hệ về kinh tế này, và chúng ta nên tận dụng cái cơ hội đó.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Napper, Congressman Lou Correa for coming to our program. Và cảm ơn quý vị rất nhiều theo dõi chương trình hôm nay. Chúng tôi xin hẹn quý vị vào chương trình kỳ sau.